kudos to both of you for slamming in all those sort of examples of cloud access. What is the overarching concern we need to know about all the sort of cloud issues that you threw out there?
The underlying systemic risk is really around permissions and assignment of those permissions, allowing over-permissioned access to a plethora of cloud resources.
From a insider threat perspective, an attacker perspective, or anything else, I want the most permissions, because if I don't have permissions and I take over an account, can't do anything with it.
Cloud service providers are adding new features and permissions daily as well. How do you keep up with all of this? And I think fundamentally, it just begs the need for automation and furthermore, visibility.
People tend to over permissions because of inexperience, or this was a dev environment, this is now a production environment, and here's the administrators. It's kind of, at the end of the day, it's like, hey, we just give all access, or way too much access for levels of people to actually do. And to his point, most of it's never even used.
If you can design automation around the ability to say, these are the permissions assigned over the last 90 days, these are the permissions I've seen used, to use that to calculate some least privilege policies and push that out in the environment.
There is an inherent bias around automation because you're taking humans out of the loop. So the initial assumption when we automate is that it actually has to be 100% correct. If you know exactly what you're going to do, there's no reason to not be able to automate that correctly. And any exceptions during that automated process go into a peer review, go into someone else's review.
When you take a look at some of these cloud service providers, 9, 10,000 permissions by default, understanding those permissions is very, very difficult. So automation in that regard really comes in handy in helping categorize those permissions so you can make better decisions regarding, what types of permissions or what groups of permissions you are or are not going to give out.
I think one of the most dangerous things you get into is when people start jumping in and doing things in a cloud environment as they potentially would do in a data center environment or an on-prem environment. And it's very different in that. And I think that's where ends up a lot of mistakes.
Brian Solari of App Omni has this question. How do you sell the use of automation to candidates who see automation as a threat to their long-term job security?
Most of the organizations we work with today are overwhelmed with projects, overwhelmed with data, right? So this typically is more of a case in which we're helping them so they can spend more time on some of the other projects.
I think one of the biggest areas that a lot of organizations are continually struggling with is cloud changes so rapidly and so fast. The other thing is data hoarding was one of the key areas, as people will go, well, I'll reach out and grab the data and bring it in, because their assumption is, well, I may need it again. So why do I want to be able to do it? But at that same time, you increase your storage cost and you increase the data. And now you have more things in different areas.
This bad idea says, embrace chaos engineering concepts to implement chaos-based access control.
There are certain groups like Netflix that have built tools just to test and crash things just to see how they recover, and the same thing. So it's actually a good bad idea that's there to say, okay, you're taking the heart of your organization and messing it up.
When you think about in a controlled environment where you have the opportunity to do reverse engineering, these techniques do uncover some of those toxic combinations of permissions and access and things like that unless exercised, you probably would never know exist within your super sophisticated cloud.
This comes from Matthew Bybee, who asks, what are some strategies to manage cloud access when you have multiple cloud service providers, not enough FTEs to manage it, and little to no budget?
If you really are struggling with this, you focus on what you can actually do. And if training would be one of the first places I would start in the environments that's there.
A chaos access control, as opposed to a role-based or an attribute-based access control, keeps swapping out the permissions on you, right? And it keeps, now all of a sudden you observe the failures from the access control logs, and now you're able to tune and tweak the parameters, figure out which ones you remove you don't need, which ones you do need. Just builds the system. And we know that everything fails all the time. That's how you build highly available systems. So put that on your security.
You guys mentioned friction. If you look online, there are so many ways to beat CAPTCHA. You don't want to lose clients. You don't want to lose employees either. So it doesn't work, and it's frustrating.
Which one of them has the worst idea here?
I can guarantee it wouldn't be 16 days of implementing the CAPTCHA side of it before I would be looking for new opportunities at that point in time.
The chaos one, to me, that just seems like, you know, the basis for getting breached as soon as possible, right? I mean, you know, we do risk assessments day in and day out. Every organization is challenged in terms of identifying, you know, where they've got inactive users that are sitting out there that are no longer being used. At the end of the day, getting that visibility, as we mentioned earlier, and using that to calculate least privileges, get rid of all those unnecessary permissions, is really a good starting point in leveraging activity to really calculate least privileges.
Do not walk, run to the cloud. Pick a couple of the clouds that you are highly likely that you're going to be in at some level, shape, or form, and get the training, get the ways, understand how you're going to operate in that environment. Because if you don't, they're going to expect you to start from day one. And it says, hey, it takes about 30 days to roll the application up and it should be live. And you're going to be doomed to failure at that point in time. You will be looking for the next opportunity at that point. So run to the cloud.